Are Jaqen Hagar and Syrio Forel the same person? Was Jaqen secretly training Arya to fight before we even knew he existed? Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to In Deep Geek. On this channel we cover A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, as well as other great fantasy worlds like The Lord of the Rings, The Witcher and more. If you like the sound of that, there's a subscribe button in the bottom right of your screen. This is the next in my series of videos about the faceless men in A Song of Ice and Fire. This can be watched as a standalone video, but if you want to watch the other videos in the series first, then come back here, feel free. So, was Syrio Forel Jaqen in disguise? This is a long-standing theory in the Game of Thrones fandom. If you're new to it, then it goes something like this. Syrio, the swordmaster that Ned hires to teach Arya to use her sword needle, was actually, probably unbeknownst to Ned, the faceless man we know as Jaqen. He starts training up Arya then, and protects her when Meryn Trant and the Lannister soldiers come for her. Of course, we don't actually see him die, on page or screen, which is always a bit suspicious, so perhaps he survived that, and the reason we don't hear from him again is that he changes his appearance to be Jaqen, getting himself into Yoren's caravan heading for the wall so that he can escape King's Landing and continue looking after and training Arya. It's easy to see why this theory is so popular. Syrio was a great character and Jaqen is too, and with face-changing assassins you can never be completely sure of anyone's real identity. Added to which, there are a lot of links between Syrio and Jaqen. First, they have a similar role in relation to Arya, training her, mentoring her, protecting her, and so it makes sense if this was the same person with a different face. They're both from Braavos. They talk in similar, slightly stilted ways and have some very similar sounding beliefs. It's hard not to see the echo of Syrio saying, "There is only one god and his name is death," in the way that Jaqen greets Arya at the House of Black and White in the show. "There is only one god and a girl knows his name." They seem to teach her similar things, too. Syrio doesn't just teach her to fight, he shows her how to fight blindfolded and sneak around, just like the faceless men do for Arya in Braavos. And the timing sort of works. Syrio leaves the story around the time and place that Jaqen enters it. There's also a lingering feeling that Syrio might have survived that fight with Meryn Trant. He was an expert swordsman after all, and had managed to beat back several Lannister guards already, armed only with a wooden practice sword. Meryn Trant wasn't a great fighter, so maybe. So yes, there are certainly some things going for this theory. Plus it is undeniably fun, and can't ever be 100% disproved. We know that Jaqen can change his appearance seemingly at will, so why not? Well, let's analyse these arguments in favour and see whether they really are that convincing. First, yes, they are both from Braavos, but so are lots of people. Braavos is a huge city and probably the most ethnically and culturally diverse city in the world. Just because two people both come from there doesn't mean that they are connected, any more than you know every single person in the city you live in. Unless we know they know each other, we should probably assume that they don't. And Syrio wasn't just a random Braavosi, he was one of the most famous people in Braavos, very high profile, the first sword of Braavos. So famous that even down-to-earth Ned from out-of-the-way Winterfell considers him to have an excellent reputation. This doesn't quite fit with the usual faceless men tactic of being no one and merging into the background. The other people Jaqen masquerades as are a prisoner, a nameless alchemist, and then an unremarkable acolyte in the Citadel. Arya later becomes a blind beggar, a cockle seller, and a bit-part player in a theatre troupe. All very low profile, and not faces people would recognise. This would be a big change in approach for the faceless men to take on the appearance of a celebrity. So for Jaqen to choose to appear as a well-known fighter would be out of character, to say the least. Which brings us to the similarities in how Syrio and Jaqen speak and what they seem to believe. I'll be upfront and say that this is very much a show-only thing. Although neither clearly speaks the common tongue as their first language, Jaqen's avoidance of personal pronouns, saying a man will do something rather than I will do something, for example, is very much a Lorathi thing. The character Jaqen Hagar plays comes originally from Lorath, another of the free cities in Essos. Where the faceless man behind the disguise comes from, we simply don't know. Simply put, suggesting there is a language link between the two is not supported in the books. And if we dig a bit deeper, although on the surface what the two of them teach Aya is quite simple, killing, sneaking, that kind of thing, they come from almost opposite perspectives. Jaqen is all about disguises, looking like something or someone you are not so you can get close enough to kill someone. Syrio is about seeing through disguises so that you can prevent assassins. Jaqen is the assassin, Syrio is the anti-assassin bodyguard, complete opposites. Syrio explains all this to Aya when talking about how he was appointed to his post as First Sword in Braavos. When I came into the Sea Lord's presence, he was seated, and in his lap was a fat yellow cat. He told me that one of his captains had brought the beast to him from an island beyond the sunrise. "Have you ever seen her like?" he asked of me, and to him I said, "Each night in the alleys of Braavos I see 1,000 like him." And the Sea Lord laughed, and that day I was named the First Sword. Aya screwed up her face. "I don't understand." Syrio clicked his teeth together. The cat was an ordinary cat, no more. The others expected a fabulous beast, so that is what they saw. How large it was, they said. It was no larger than any other cat, only fat from indolence, for the Sea Lord fed it from his own table. What curious small ears, they said. Its ears had been chewed away in kitten fights, and it was plainly a tomcat, yet the Sea Lord said her, and that is what the others saw. "Are you hearing?" Aya thought about it. "You saw what was there." "Just so. Opening your eyes is all that is needed. The heart lies and the head plays tricks with us, but the eyes see true. Look with your eyes, hear with your ears, taste with your mouth." Syrio taught Aya to see past what others want you to see. Jaqen and the Faceless Men were the opposite, trying to teach her how to disguise herself and her intentions. Taking a step back, this is completely true to what they were in Braavos. Jaqen was a faceless man assassin, trying to disguise who he is to get close enough to kill people. Syrio was a bodyguard, hired, frankly, to spot people like Jaqen. So what about that shared connection to the god of death? Well, again, that's a show-only thing. In the books, Syrio doesn't mention any religious thing at all, certainly not the god of death. When they part in the books, there is no, "What do we say to the god of death?" There's just a, "Aya, be gone now." So, no, there is no similarity there, and Jaqen and Syrio's worldviews again seem diametrically opposite. On the show, Syrio and Jaqen both talk about there only being one god, the god of death, but not in the books. Jaqen is the one trying to kill, Vala Morgulis, all men must die. Syrio is the one opposing that. Now, we don't know what happened in that fight after Aya ran off, other than the fact that Syrio was never seen again, and that Merentrant emerged apparently unharmed. But the most likely conclusion from those two facts is that Syrio was killed. Merentrant might not have been a great fighter, but he had a sword and armour, and Syrio did not. Even his wooden practice sword was broken. That's the last we see of the fight. Might Syrio have escaped? He doesn't seem the type to back down or yield, and even says that the First Sword of Braavos does not run. Aya, who saw the situation, was so convinced that the fight was hopeless and Syrio killed that she included Merentrant in her prayer, her kill list. She didn't need persuading that Merentrant had prevailed and Syrio was dead. All of that said, I think that speculating about what happened in that fight is actually a bit of a red herring. Whether Syrio won or lost doesn't make any difference to whether he's secretly Jaqen. He could have lost and been thrown into the black cells and turned into Jaqen there, or won and decided to change his appearance to evade capture. Similarly, he could have lost and not been killed and not be Jaqen, or won and just slipped away unnoticed as Syrio. Any outcome from that fight is possible and is actually neither here nor there when trying to work out whether Syrio was really Jaqen. The real question is whether there is a reason for the Faceless Men to take an interest in Aya so early. Is there a compelling reason why they might want what seems to be their top assassin to take a lot of time out, weeks or months, when we know he had other jobs to do in order to train and protect the young Aya? Well, as we will get onto in the next video, Arya is undoubtedly an ideal candidate for joining the Faceless Men, skills, aptitude and personality, but they surely can't have known that until they came into contact with her, and at that point Arya was just a precocious 10-year-old, not really giving any hints of her ability to disguise herself, fight, be a merciless killer or wag into animals. Simply put, before Syrio started training her, and before she was forced to disguise herself and look out for herself with no family around, she wasn't showing many of the traits that the Faceless Men must have found so appealing, and she wasn't so obsessed with killing and death. If we are to believe that Jaqen proactively sought her out as Syrio at that early point, when she had just arrived in King's Landing, then we have to assume that the Faceless Men sought her out for no particular reason at all. At that point, she hadn't developed an appetite for death, changing faces, or anything. So what does this all mean? Was Syrio Jaqen in disguise? Well, the honest answer is that there is no reason to think so. The evidence to suggest the theory is based on their shared link to Braavos, and to be honest, the fact that they are both badass dark mentors to Arya. Neither of these things is particularly convincing. Placed against that is the fact that they are completely opposite in their worldviews. They contradict each other's advice, and, well, there is absolutely no reason for Jaqen to be interested in Arya at that point. It doesn't make sense for him to take on the role of Syrio just to get close to this random third-born daughter of Ned Stark. And finally, let's take a moment to think about the timing. Jaqen placed himself in the Black Cells and waited there knowing that he would be co-opted into the Night's Watch caravan heading north. His mission was clearly connected to that. He was committed to that well before Arya was unexpectedly added to the group. She was only there in the caravan by accident because Yoren happened to spot her in the crowd when Ned was executed, while Jaqen was already locked in a cage committed to heading north. She wasn't supposed to be there at all. I'll admit that this is a fun theory and ties a few things together on the show, but in the books, no. There are other more straightforward solutions here. Or to be even more honest, there is no need for a solution at all. There is no mystery. We have two completely different characters with completely different worldviews. The only real thematic connection between Jaqen and Syrio is in mentoring Arya, and they are not alone in that. Ned starts it off. Sandor Clegane, the Hound, takes an important role for a long time, and Jaqen isn't even in Braavos when Arya is there, so that role is taken on by, if anyone, the kindly man. Is it possible that a faceless man sailed over from Braavos, took on the identity of a famous Braavosi water dancer against usual faceless men practices in order to mentor a previously unknown third-born Stark child, then faked his death in a way that allowed Meryn Trant to survive and claimed that he'd killed him, then switched his identity to a criminal held in the Black Cells, getting himself locked in a cage heading north, on the off chance that the missing Arya would get discovered by Yoren that very afternoon, disguised as a boy and join the caravan, then not reveal who he was to her, but instead teach her the exact opposite of what he had been teaching her before. Yes, I suppose the chance of that is non-zero, but George R.R. Martin is a very realistic writer in his fantasy world. It has to be internally coherent, and this, I think, would just stretch credulity when Occam's razor would suggest that they are just different people. Jaqen doesn't need to disguise himself as Syrio in order for the story to work. George R.R. Martin gives us more than enough clues and a clash of kings to show us that Jaqen is studying Arya and figuring out who she is and what she is capable of. He saw someone willing to kill and happy taking on different identities and, well, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Why Jaqen chose Arya will be the next video in this series. For now, the key point is that there is simply no story need for Jaqen to be aware of Arya before he first sets eyes on her in the Night's Watch caravan heading north. So could this theory be true? Could Syrio be Jaqen in disguise? On the show, why not? We never saw Syrio's body, and the things they teach aren't that dissimilar. There's no evidence for it, but still no real evidence against it either. But in the books, I think it's pushing it a bit too far. We can't categorically say it can't be true, but there really isn't any significant evidence to support it, and there is quite a lot of evidence to suggest that it probably isn't true. But what do you think? Was Syrio Jaqen in disguise? Why? Let me know in the comments below. If you'd like to watch more in this series about the faceless men in A Song of Ice and Fire, there's a link to the playlist on the left of your screen now. Or if you'd like to support this channel, the best way to do that is by clicking on the link to my Patreon page on the right of your screen. Thanks for watching. That's all for this time. I'll see you again soon.